Htp family, you're tuning into the pro-black perspective on KWAZ Radio. And today is going to be something special. Usually when I'm reading through the Book of Power, I read you a lot of other people's speeches. But today we're going to go into one of my own and one of my favorites. So this one is, of course, called Proof to the Law of Maat, and it's written by yours truly, Onitaset Kumat, right? I'm going to start it off, and this is me aging myself, but 9 years ago, at 21, I wrote Proof to the Law of Morality, right? This essay marked when I started to live up to my name, Onitaset Kumat. And I began my confidence in my belief that I could contribute meaningfully and uniquely, this is very important, to the improvement of our people, if not the world, right? So this is something that I want people to understand too, is that you have to believe that you can contribute meaningfully and uniquely, right, to the improvement of our people. And so that's what Proof to the Law of Morality did for me. If you want to read Proof to the Law of Morality, just go to the African Blood Siblings website. It is not something that everybody can understand, but it is it's a highly philosophical piece of work, but at the same time, it's something that you might enjoy if you're into deep philosophy. But the essay, in combination with the pamphlet it was a part of, articulated a novel and near holistic answer to what is morality. A question which evades Eurasians, but our ancient forebears easily understood. So this is one of the most important things on the planet. The question is, what is morality? And for a lot of us, we don't know. And because we don't know, we try to find substitutions for what morality may be. But again, it's not something that's really understood. And even back then, I was almost there, right? So the trouble with this essay, you'll see, right, despite being brilliant and eventually leading to a holistic answer to what is morality within a year of its publication, it is too boring, esoteric, and out of touch for this book. So the what is morality question is just boring. I'm not going to front. So if you want to go read it, you can go. So this is Proof to the Law of Maat, right? A more specific answer to what is African morality, or what is Maat. So Maat would be, our version of morality, right? And so the importance of the way even above life and the centrality of war as a concept of justice can never be understated. So this is really what it comes down to. We have the way, and our way is more important than our lives, right? And war is central to the concept of justice, right? And I'm going to elaborate and explain that throughout here. So thank you everybody for joining me today. So let's go. These premises and principles fully articulate the world of ethics as we know it, thus making this essay remarkably insightful. The rationale behind aspiritualities, the reasoning for war, the formation of societies, past, present, and future, the aspirations of Africans all over the world, all expressed in one sentence and explained in a speech. It behooves you to not have a boko so that African talents can be developed by Africa's talented. For now, you have books to share and teach from. The speech contextualizes everything. Understand it, and you will understand everything. So, it sounds like a big, exposition, but this is what is at stake. The understanding of everything boils down to actually this sentence, Maat is war against Isfet, and Isfet is war against Maat. That's pretty much all we need to know. Now, of course, what is Maat? What is Isfet? Once you understand that outside of itself, then you'll have a deeper understanding of everything. So this is the law of Maat, right? This elegant statement articulates the entirety of your moral being if you can decipher it. But the main takeaways are the centrality of warfare to your ethical existence and how Maat is more important than life. You are as good as your war. You are not good without war. If Maat is threatened, this is what is meant by blameless. We often perceive innocence as being uninvolved, but our ancestors weren't the innocent Kenesu, but the blameless Kenesu. Blameless means you did right, and opposing wrong makes a right. So, just to explain, so blameless really, the phrase you can look up is blameless Ethiopian. I decided to use Kenesu, but the reality is that our ancestors were known internet like across the globe as blameless Ethiopians, right? But blameless is not the same as innocent. You know, blameless means that you've done right. That means you've opposed wrong. It's not that. It's not simply that you did not do wrong. Innocent means you didn't do wrong. Blameless means you've opposed the wrong. So if you see somebody attacking, like assaulting another person, right? You not doing anything will make you innocent, right? You stopping the attack will make you blameless, and that's the difference between Maat and just being a coward in a sense, right? And of course, it's not to say that you have to attack, oppose every wrong in that sense, or in your own physical, you're going to attack them yourself. You can also coordinate an attack. You can also call up people to coordinate a more effective attack. But the reality is that you cannot simply sit by. You have to go against them. And that's actually, if we're being honest, that's really the difference. It's not enough to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to sit back and I know something is wrong, and I'm just going to sit back and let it go because, like let everybody do what they're doing. You have to be blameless, which means you say, look here, no, I'm against that. I'm against that, and I'm going to fight it. I'm going to oppose it because I need our people to return to Ma'at and return to our way. Okay? So we're going to continue, all right? So this ethical formulation communicates what social organization a righteous people must adopt and have adopted in the past. This in turn explains why our enemies would promote aspiritualities on us. But to understand it, we must look back. So this is important. Aspiritualities would be the religions, right? If you can break away from this idea of opposing wrong, of opposing Isfet, war against Isfet, right? War against disorder, right? Or war for the purpose of order, right? If you can turn people away from that and give them religions that do not promote this, right? Do not promote this kind of mentality, then you'll understand why your enemies would promote religions among you. And of course, given the fact that contextually in this day and age, people are still discussing religions for some reason, right? You can kind of just see, even in this word sentence, we have to oppose it. Being about Ma'at is about going to war against the ways of our enemies. Okay, so let's go into history right now. Despite her innumerable victories, Africa has suffered great losses. Two of the greatest were the Green Sahara and the Nome of Waset. So if you know about my literature, you'll know I talk about Boko, Waset, Nakero. Waset is a reference to the Nome of Waset in a sense, right? But let's go into it. The loss of the Green Sahara has yet to be understood. There was once the Ma'a Confederation, an ancient high culture around a mega lake in Africa's Sahara, and sand consumed it and buried the civilization it beheld, preempting what might be the first diaspora of advanced African migrants. So this is actually really important, right? We tend to consider ourselves the African diaspora, and some of us inside of the Western world think that we are the diaspora of West Africa, maybe, right? But the reality is that there was a civilization in the Green Sahara, right? Around the mega lake, they call it Chad now, but around the mega lake in the Sahara, and when that confederation dissolved in a sense, or was consumed by sand or whatever, right? That federation created a diaspora, and that diaspora created what were the Ethiopians, might probably created what was their ticket, and created what is chemic, and we know this. We know this to be the truth about history. And actually, hold on a second. I'm just going to get this book I forgot to show, just for people to get a better context. See if I can find this book. So this is the book by Clyde Winters. I hope you guys can see it. This is the book by Clyde Winters. Let me see if I can put it closer to the, I guess the light's too bright. But anyway, the main thing about the book is that its title, which is Before Egypt, the Maat Confederation, Africa's First Civilization. This is written by Clyde Winters. Obviously, a lot is going on with the grammar, but at the same time, he's outlining the evidence there is of the Sahara civilization and what they may have called themselves. And so them calling themselves Ma'a is actually very relevant. And so I just wanted to share that with you as we go on. So Melanin 100% says, Shalom, brother, here to learn. Peace, family. All right, so let's go. It says, Waset was an avoidable loss. So Waset, this is really important because, I was actually just talking to a brother about this, about what happened. How did Africa fall, And so it's the immaculate Africans of ancient past arming themselves with bronze weapons didn't hold chemic against the invading 200,000 strong ironclad Assyrians and their Ascati and bastard allies. The savage hybrids arrived at Waset and looked at her high learning with scorn and ransacked and destroyed the most learned city in the world. There our race fell, then sunk, then slept. Oh, what we lost in Waset. So this is really important for us, okay? So Waset is the most learned city on the planet, right? As far as we know, there is nothing that compared, especially at the time, right? The center of learning. And then you have, but the weaponry of Kemet was, let's say, bronze, not a full-time army. The Assyrians, though, were building up this massive military force. They were held at bay, right, for a long time by certain other groups, in, let's say, the Arabian area. But eventually they were overwhelmed. Now, they're a professional 200,000 strong iron weaponry group, and they're brutal, they're savage, they're monstrous, right? They're proceeding towards Kemet. Kemet does not, well, what happens is this. The Assyrians also make alliances with Libya or Persia, and, there's so many different alliances that go on that the Africans of Kemet are then overwhelmed. They're outnumbered, and then like a lot of people have to flee. A lot of people have to flee, or a lot of people die. But what happens is that Waset, being a university town in a sense, right? The most learned place on the planet, Waset is gone. And then our race that depended upon this intelligence, that depended upon this research, this learned background, goes to sleep. For the most part. Sometimes coming back up, sometimes waking up. And if you know about global history, you know that eventually the Arabs take, let's say, the Arabs eventually take it, or the Romans eventually take Kemet, and they become, pretty important civilizations. The Arabs eventually, and then eventually it all comes around to these Europeans who take over the Arabs and get all this knowledge and then use that to enslave us, and it just compounds. It just compounds on us. But this is what it is, Waset, the city of Was, and this is so important right here. The city of power. See, Was means power. Waset means the city of Was, the city of power. The Africans were letting us know what power meant. See, this is from the Book of Power. So when the Book of Power is focusing on Waset, it's focusing on what ancient Africans understood to be power. Because our ancestors ourselves said, yes, this is the city of power. And why was it the city of power? Because it was the most learned city on the planet. Knowledge and power go hand in hand. It's the Book of Power is really about how do we get that knowledge? How do you disseminate that knowledge? And how do you tactically disseminate that knowledge in order that we can strategically build up power? this is the premise of the book, and you know, when you get it, you'll see what it's meant right here. But the city of Was, the city of power, was the center of dynastic Nile Valley education. This isn't what I'm saying. This is what, like Dr. Ben or Joseph Ben Yakinen was saying the same as well, you know? And it's important to realize that this is how the world is shaped. You know, the center of American power, for instance, is Harvard and Yale. You know, the center of British power is, what's it called, Oxford and Cambridge, right? Those are the centers of power. You might not know them as that, right? But that's what they are, right? And I've heard this from Alton Maddox Jr., you know? The point is that if you understand that, like, when you understand that those are the centers of power of America, and you'll understand it at some point. If not, read the book, you'll get it, right? But when you understand those are the centers of power, then you say to yourself, well, what about Africa's centers of power right now, right? And we don't have them. You see? And that's why you would build Boko Waset Nakero. But we're going to continue. And the focus there was on the old ways, the ways that binded us long ago. So here's the thing I want to explain to you guys again. So nome, right? A nome is like a state. Okay? So so Kemet was a federation, right? They had a federal. The federal government was the Ptah, or the pharaoh, if you will, right? Or the Nesu, sorry, the Nesu, or the pharaoh, right? And so the Nesu, the king, but then they had so there was the monarch, and then there were the nomarchs. The nomarchs were like the governors of the different states, right? So if you think about the United States of America, that's probably what you'll probably understand if if you're familiar with the global power of today, right? So there are different states; those are governors. So those are nomarchs, right? So each of the nomes, one of the nomes would be Waset, okay? One of the nomes is Waset. The other nomes are other states, right, with other governors and all that. There's 42 nomes. But Waset was the one that was focused in Upper Kemet, or, pretty much pure black Kemet, right? And they were trying to find out the old ways. They were the most learned. They were the most, like they were the seat of power in a lot of ways. And like that's where they put the capital. When black folk came to rule, that's where they put the capital, because they were like, this is the one that really honors our ancestors the most. And so when they did that, they went to the worship of Amun, right? So Waset is worship of Amun. Now, other nomarchs, other nomes will have different necheru to to center, right? But Waset centers Amun, right? So and this is important too, because when you really open this book, right, you can see that Amun is worshipped in the Maat Confederation, right? So that's where the next sentence comes in. There was always the ways that binded us. So in the Green Sahara, for thousands of years, Africans worshipped the Amun, right? In Waset, thousands of years later, okay, thousands of years later, Africans worshipped the Amun. Further south, as early as Taseti. So Taseti is the first established kingship, right? And the diaspora to the Maat Confederation. So after the Maat Confederation, whatever, right? Taseti is settled, right? Taseti is established, and in that establishment, what you say to yourself, well, who were they worshiping in Taseti? This is the first diaspora of the Maat Confederation, right? And the Africans are worshiping Amun. So even today, all throughout Africa, though the names vary between different nations, Africans worship Amun. And you could ask different, Africans who if you, it's not going to be direct, right? But if you inquire, or even if you say, hey, is Amun a familiar word or something, right? Sometimes you'll hear, oh yeah, there's something about like a creator, and yeah, the name was like you might get some other kind of name, but you can see it's derivative of Amun. Obviously, if it's not written down, it's not going to be the same exact thing. Thousands of years later, because even if you look at, say, the English language, there was Middle English, there was early English, or whatever they call it, right? But the reality is that because it wasn't really written down, they're saying weird things compared to people today. But today, and this is why I say about the center of power. Today, when you have these institutions, you can institutionalize the language so that the language is a lot more consistent afterward. So you don't have that with Africa. You have people who are diaspora, who are trying to establish different kingships, establish different ways of living after their civilization collapses, but they still recognize, yeah, we worship Amon, or we worship Amon. Or Amon means something in our language, and this is like throughout Africa, right? So Africans worship Amon, right? We were known as Ammonians in the ancient world because Africans worship Amon, and this is something that a lot of us don't even pick up on. A lot of, like let's say the Greeks, right? The ancient Greeks, they would refer to the Ethiopians as Ammonians. You see what I'm saying? And of course, if you don't, if I didn't mention it, but a lot of the A spiritualities at the end of prayer, they will say Amen, or what we are told to say is Amen, right? But it depends on like again, we don't know. Like for instance, if you look at some of the ancient African writings, you'll see IMN. Like when they transliterate it into the language that's into the Latin script, they translate it into IMN. So like the vowel of O or E or whatever is left out, but like it is what it is. It's not even that big a deal. So let's say Africans worship Amon. We're known as Ammonians in the ancient world because Africans worship Amon. The message is clear. Africans worship Amon. So however, with the loss of Waset, the perfect worship of Amon needs to be rediscovered. But a major lesson survived. So that's really the gist of it. That we had a civilization, like we had civilizations where we were worshiping Amon. Okay? And this goes back that like 10,000 years, and for us now to turn around and say no, we're going to worship somebody else or something else is actually disturbing, disturbing, disgusting, who knows, but it's not normal, right? It's just not normal. And obviously the example today, a lot of Africans worship Yahweh, or an individual, a certain shepherd, a shepherd in, I don't know what it is, I don't know what to call it, but it's just not what Africans do, right? So anyway, Tulinde Ma'at, Tushinde is fat. Defend Ma'at, defeat is fat. This principle, repeated by the Nesutu of chemic, fully captures the war imperative of the moral African. That is, to be moral and righteous means to protect Ma'at and destroy its fat. The evidence is overwhelming, right? So I want you to understand this. So, Tulinde Ma'at, Tushinde is fat. What does that mean? It means defend Ma'at, defeat is fat. This is something that you could see throughout Kemet. So throughout the literature of Kemet, throughout like you'll see the Nasut. Obviously, if you're paying attention, Nasut is king, right? You go into the glossary and you can read everything in the glossary, right? But the Nasut means like king or the monarch, right? Or what they call pharaohs, right? The pharaohs of Kemet, they would say something and they would say, Tulende Ma'at Tushinde is fat, right? Now Tulende and Tushinde are Swahili words, but of course they didn't say defend or defeat either, they didn't speak English, so I'm just using it as Swahili because why not, right? But Tulende Ma'at Tushinde is fat. What that means is that you have to defend our way and defeat the enemy's way, right? Or defend Ma'at and defeat is fat. This is a war imperative. This is what made Nasut good. This is why you were a leader in Africa, to defend Ma'at, or defend order and defeat disorder. Okay? This is fundamental, right? So in Kemet's Middle Kingdom, which began centered in Kwaset, there was a poem that in part goes, and of course, I want you to understand, so there's another book, oh, here it is, right? So, this book right here, definitely, if you can't read a book, let's say 100 times, you probably, at least read this book once. This right here is When We Ruled, right? At least read this book. Let me see, can you see it? Alright, so I got this. When We Ruled, yeah. So When We Ruled by Robin Walker, right? At least read this book once. Hold on a second. I gotta turn off this this bright light so I could yeah. All right. So at least read When We Ruled once, okay? This is where you could find the Middle Kingdom or the whatever. This is one of the best. This is a top 3 history book. All right, but definitely read it once at least. You probably can't read it too many times, but read it once at least. Okay. So the poem goes: those who destroy the lie promote Maat. Those who promote the good will erase the evil. As fullness casts out appetite, as clothes cover the nude, and as beautiful sky clears up after a storm. Right? So in essence, Ma'at and Isfet are dual. Okay? As lies and truth are dual. Good and evil. Notice. Those who promote the good will erase the evil. The goal is to erase the evil. Cast out the appetite. Cover the nude. Or clear up after the storm. You get what I'm saying? The truth, lies and truth are dual. Or they'll promote the lie. If you promote the lie, no, those who destroy the lie promote Ma'at. You see what I'm saying? Ma'at will be truth in that sense, right? So in essence, Ma'at and Isfet are dual there, as lies and truth are dual, good and evil, fullness and hunger, clothing and nude, beautiful skies and storms. But note, the first 2 lines define Ma'at, while the later are similes, right? Ma'at is destroying lies. Ma'at is promoting good that erases evil. Again, Ma'at is war against Isfet. I hope you're seeing this. Again, this poem's not me. I said Ma'at is war against Isfet, right? This poem is saying Ma'at is war against Isfet. You see? This is ancient African spirituality. Like, and obviously, you're not used to it. I would imagine you're not. But when you realize this, when you recognize this, you can begin to read other literature, right? Other things that Africans are saying, and realize, oh wait, this is this is at the core of our belief system, even when we're indoctrinated, and that's really something important, you know. That's really something important. But and it's partly why we can be convinced to fight against evil and fight against wrong, you know. It's partly why, because this is the core of even ethics. This is the core of ethics, so it's the core of rhetoric, right? And in that sense, you know, if somebody can convince you that something is bad, they can convince you to go fight against it, you know, and that's what they always do. So they say, hey, you know what, these, you know, like you say, like for instance, you see a video of boys attacking a man, and usually you're like, oh, that's terrible, right? But then you're like, oh, this man was trying to talk to a little girl, and you're like, yeah, I like that, I like these kids. You get what I'm saying? That's the center of it, because what you do is you say, hey, well, the old man was talking to a little girl, he's fat, and so if you're about Ma'at, you're about going against his fat, and that's the core of even convincing people. You see, it's fun. Like I said, if you understand this, you understand everything. You know, but let's continue. If you were to travel to Waset yourself, although at present our enemies will try to prevent this, unless you are a Scari or beg them, right? See the glossary, and yeah, you can actually see the glossary for the word beg too. But anyway, on the walls etched in stone, you could read a collection of proverbs in Medu Neter. Some of them discuss Ma'at. I reprinted one of the few transcriptions available in the Pro-Black Compendium. So obviously I recommend you read the Pro-Black Compendium as well. The Pro-Black Compendium you should read before you read the Book of Power, but you really should read the Book of Power. So if you can only get one book, then get the Book of Power. But I would advise, if you can get more than one book, make sure you read this one first, right? But anyway, I can't say they are perfect transcriptions, as our enemy's limited intelligence had the first say, right? So the translations are written by Wazungu, okay? But and this is why I want to learn Medu Neter. Some people say, well, you know, why are you learning Medu Neter? Is that important? It's like, yes, because, you know, our ancestors left knowledge etched in stone for us, and like we are supposed to read it, you know. We're supposed to read it. But anyway, but for the purpose of this exercise, we can glean the ancient wisdom, and with fortune, will to reconquer our ancient land and read the words ourselves through Oncobia intelligence. Either way, these are the 3 references to Maat, right? So here's the 3, right? 1. 2 tendencies govern human choice and effort: the search after quantity and the search after quality. They classify mankind. Some follow Ma'at, others seek the way of Isfet. So just to be clear, you know, Ma'at, those who follow Ma'at are searching after quality. And those who seek the ways of Isfet are searching after quantity. You see? And these are the things that classify mankind, right? And of course, when we talk about mankind, we're talking about, look, like say the Ankobia are about following Maat, and the Askari and the Wazungu, the hybrids, the bastards, they are seeking Isfet. This is something that you you have to recognize. Well, not let's not say every bastard, but the hybrids definitely, right? Anyway, let's go. You will free yourself when you learn to be neutral and follow the instructions of your heart without letting things perturb you. This is the way of Ma'at. So that's another thing about Ma'at, when you could follow the instructions of your heart, and it's really important. I don't know if I'm going to go into it, what the heart means. I think I'm going to, but the instructions of your heart, this is something so fundamental that a lot of people don't even understand. I had the great fortune, like I said, I used to be an organizer, right? So I had the great fortune of organizing, and some of the people who were in the organization also were, going through other sorts of, training and initiations and so on and so forth. And so they sometimes would bring some knowledge. And one of the things about, or they often brought some knowledge, right? And one of the things about the instructions of your heart, which I hope I'm going to go into later, but the instructions of your heart is that, this is what I want you to understand. When you do something that you know is wrong, your heart feels heavier. Like if you ever noticed when you do something that you feel that you know is wrong, right? When you're just waiting, your heart inside of you, or you can do the left side or whatever, right? But your heart feels heavier, right? And of course, if you're doing good and whatever, your heart feels light, right? And this is actually what you see in the ancient African iconography, right? You'll see that the heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. When you're being judged in the afterlife, in a sense, right? But this is the science of African spirituality, right? This is the thing about the human anatomy that's otherwise not really understood. That if you're like, let's say once upon a time I'll be talking to a lady, and things don't go well, and then I'm just like, what, forget it, I don't want to deal with you, right? Then like the heart is like, I might have been wrong. You're wrong, dude. And that's what's going on. And this is what it's meant by Maat. But it's also, but it's also another thing I want to say is you will free yourself when you learn to be neutral, right? And don't let things perturb you. That's another thing, just being that, like if you're really trying to go about in this life, you have to reach that point where you're just not perturbed by everything. And that's another thing. But right here, Ma'at, who links universal to terrestrial, the divine with the human, is incomprehensible to the cerebral intelligence. And this is actually pretty important. If you are at all following my Yorugu conversation, you'll see that Ani describes spirituality as this cosmological connection, so on and so forth. And you see that, and then she also kind of says, what, it's not just logic or whatever, as Wazungu will have us to believe. And yet you see this is an ancient proverb, like an ancient piece of writing etched in stone for us, and it's repeating. Yes, Ma'at is bigger than cerebral. It's bigger than the cerebral intelligence. It is linking the universal with the terrestrial. The divine with the human. And if you just want to think it through, you'll never reach it. And this is what Wazungu does. Wazungu tries to think it through, and they'll never reach it. And this is what our ancestors are saying. So, notably for the first proverb, the Eurasian translator originally wrote animal instinct instead of Isfet. So that's really important. So, I think inside of the pro-black compendium, you'll see others seek the way of animal instinct. So they say that it's Ma'at and then there's animal instinct, as opposed to Ma'at and Isfet. So this could be clarified by way of reading the actual meta-netra. So I don't know what I don't know what it's supposed to mean, right? I mean, I imagine, I don't know what it could be. But both interpretations are interesting in the context of the understanding of the loss of the Ma'at Confederation. So, and this is important, what if Ma'at is a homage to the old ways? You see what I'm saying? Because again, you see it. Maat Confederation, Maat. What if it's just a homage to the old ways? You understand? Like Sankofa. You see? Sankofa. Ptah Htp says, also reprinted in the Pro-Black Compendium, great is Ma'at. It is everlasting. Ma'at has been unchanged since the time of Asar. So if, for those of you who saw my debate, I was asked, how do you know Ma'at is infallible or something like that? And, to me, I was just taken aback because it was just like, what? Ma'at is everlasting. Ma'at has been unchanged since the time of Asar. So it just didn't, like, to me, it was just like, what? It's like this is the thing we know about Ma'at. The fact that Ma'at is something above and beyond us. It's not even on our level. It doesn't change with us. It's eternal. It was there before us and it's there after us. It's something separate from ourselves. So if you saw the debate, you probably I was just like I just didn't even know. It was just weird. It was just weird to me. But anyway, let's see. Asar was the initial colonizer of Kemet. So he's saying that from the time of Kemet being colonized. So that's another thing you have to realize, that Kemet was a colony, right? Of Kenesu, right? And I mean, for those of you who read the Bible or whatever, or the Old Testament or whatever, you have to understand it in the context of it's a book, it's a work of fiction, but historical fiction in the sense that it's based off of a history that the people of that time period, or let's say the ancient Jews or whatever, created. They created a historical fiction where they put themselves into the history of the world. And so one of the things about the history of the world would be that Noah story. So the Noah story, just to clarify to people who are listening, the Noah story is the story of some great flood, and then after the flood, this individual named Noah, or not after the flood, but yeah, after the flood, individual named Noah and his 3 sons have their own children, and the oldest son, being Ham, is the African race, right? The next son is Shem. It's like the mixed race or whatever, right? And then the Japhet is like a white race or something like that, like the pure white race, and the other ones are like a little bit tan or whatever. The thing about it though is that Ham then has his own children, and if you look at the children, you look at Ethiopia is the first child, Egypt is the second child, then there's like 2 others, Canaan being the 4th, or Persia being the 3rd. It doesn't matter. The point is that the first kid, Ethiopia, is Taseti, right? And the second kid is Egypt. And so what that tells you is that, and this is really important if you recognize it as historical fiction, right, or allegory, right, you realize that they're telling you, yes, the first kingdom after the last flood, whatever the flood means, right? And the flood might be just the end of the Maya Confederation. So the first kingdom after the end of the Maya Confederation is Tasei. That's what we know. And the second one is Kemet, which would be a colony of Kenesu. You see? And that's what these people later on were learning. They were learning the history of the world, and they learned that the last flood. So one of the things that you'll pick up on if you read these, like for instance, if you read this particular, it's like Plato is talking to, Timaeus. So Plato is talking to Timaeus. So in Timaeus, Solon. Solon is described. Solon is considered one of the 7 great sages of Greece, right? So he goes to an ancient African, like an ancient Kemetu priest inside the story, Timaeus, right? And the priest tells him, Solon, Solon, you Greeks are perennial infants. Not a single Greek is an elder, right? And then he goes on to say, you don't even, you only remember 1 flood, right? Whereas we remember, 8 or something, or 8 or 7. And say there were plenty of floods in the ancient world, and so on and so forth. So, but you kind of can, if you parse it together, you realize that people were going to Africa to learn, world history, and they learned that they weren't a part of it. And so they made up a historical fiction in order to be, a part of it. But why I'm saying all this is to say that, you know, our ancestors now, you have Maat, and Maat is named after the federation that would have been destroyed in the flood. You see what I'm saying? So Maat, as the personification of the Maat Confederation, suits this contention. Another reference in the pro-black compendium is the Kemetu Code of Virtues. It details an ethical existence, but according to what? And this is the most notable in the fact that there are two Maat sisters, often translated as justice and truth, or law and truth. Right? The question then becomes, what constitutes truth? What constitutes justice? What constitutes law? And as the Kemetu and Kenesu came from an older civilization, didn't that older civilization have a justice, a truth, a law? So that's what I'm saying. Now, the Maat Confederation, I wish I read this book, but I don't remember it off the top of my head how long it lasted, but it lasted a long time, right? For instance, right here, you can see by 10,000 BC, well, you can't see it, but I just turned to page 16, and it's like, by 10,000 BC, Nubians began to migrate out of Nubia into Asia, he says these Nubians were not Proto-Saharans. The Proto-Saharans were still living in the Sahara highlands at this time. These Nubians were the Anu people. So he's really going into, and of course he does the citations and what have you. But the point is that these are, there's a long-standing civilization that had its codes, had its laws, had its truth, and then now you have a diaspora of this civilization, and they name their code of ethics after the people that they came from. And so now the question becomes, is their justice, their truth, their law, is it not going to be based off of their older civilization, right? And again, this is African civilization. This is African spirituality like you're not used to, right? And that's why I say get this book, because if the book stops selling, that's it. Is it a real coincidence that the Necha root, and this means the female Necha, right? For these concepts mirrors and names their older, vibrant civilization, the civilization that might have lasted thousands of years, right? Could it be that Maat is an African expression akin to Sankofa, the modern symbol expression for return and getting, right? So that's a question 216. So now let's look at these three proverbs again, right? The first suggests the hierarchy of Ma'at over Isfet, or animal instinct, right? And this is worth understanding when we consider that a population existed in Kemet prior to the first dynasty, right? In this way, animal instinct, while likely a wrong interpretation, as animals aren't necessarily immortal, can be seen in the ancient view as maybe people are instinctually basic, self-centered, misorganized, or survival-oriented, right? Or practitioners of a low culture, and the consciousness of the old way, our way, is a superior consciousness to uphold a high culture, if you will. So this is something that's really important, that because a lot of our people, when we look at African spirituality, we tend to not recognize or realize the difference between low culture and high culture. Or not realize that, let's say you are a diaspora, and you might not necessarily bring the ways of the old, with you. You might have to start off at a basic level, self-centered a bit, misorganized, or survival-oriented. Not necessarily the same as the people who formed this ancient civilization, And so, or even when you come to Kemet, well, and I'll make it clear, a little more clear. Asar, when he leads the colonization effort in Kemet, it's a swamp. You understand? Kemet is a swamp. After the Nile Valley, the Nile Valley is, depositing into this area, but it's like, trees are falling down and this, trees are falling down, there's trees in the way, there's this, there's that. You have to do a huge terraforming to make it into a land where you can now have fertility in the soil and set up agriculture, so on and so forth, as opposed to, maybe just walking around like, in a sense, like let's say monkeys, or animals, And of course, these were like the Asians were living there for the most part. Not for the most part, but Asians and Africans and so on and so forth. But people weren't necessarily it's kind of like when you think about how like monkeys or primates, live. They're not necessarily building cities per se, you know, and they're not. There's nothing necessarily wrong with their life, you know. They might be like eating fruits that they find or so on and so forth. But they're not necessarily going to be like it's not necessarily that they're going to be clothed in this so on and so forth or organized. And this is just something that's realistic, you know, that you know, even though humans, you know, are evolved from hominids, and so did apes, and there's nothing wrong with, there's nothing to expect that at the moment that we became Homo sapiens that we also everywhere universally never had any ways that were akin to apes, especially when you consider that they're Wazungu, Wazungu living in caves and like if you read the accounts of what ancient Europe was like during the winter time, they would dig holes into the ground and store food in there and put feces over the holes, kind of like maybe to keep warm, but also to distract animals or distract real predators. There's no cities and townships. And then they would get out of those holes. They dig their ways out of these holes in order to maybe kill other people or hunt with other people to find animals that were really difficult to kill. It was like this is the way of humans or hybrids or whatever. This is the way of individuals at this time. And then of course there were the Africans who had something else. A large degree we had agriculture, but if you're in a swamp, you probably didn't. And so this would also be the animal instinct in that sense. This would also be the animal instinct. Digging a hole and what that's you could expect that from like a gopher or something. I don't know, but again, this is something to consider that there are people who come from ancient, like an older civilization, and recall that for instance, the first culture in the world. If you pick up the Pro-Black Compendium, you'll see that Katanga. Yeah, I think it's Katanga. It's the first culture in the world. It's like a fishing village. So that's where Africans, like that's where humans began to settle into like a way of actual culture, as opposed to, like I said, just hanging around in Dunda or whatever, up in Europe. That's what they were doing at the same time. So, it's really important to understand that, when we talk about what animal instinct is, or even when we talk about instinct is. But again, this is not something that we're used to understanding. And then, of course, when we talk about even our ancestors, as we lost our way, because you couldn't hold on to the entirety of the way, right? Because it's a massive way. We'll keep certain fragments of our older culture, but at the same time, if you're dealing with predators, if you're dealing with villains, you're dealing with wicked mercenaries and all that kind of stuff. If you're dealing with this kind of stuff, you might also, in certain ways, return to what we would be as humans. I mean, if you know of what is known as a feral human, then it's entirely possible that there were many feral humans, particularly once upon a time, and then so what the high culture versus the low culture, or even the middle culture in a sense is that low culture or even lower it could be closer to feral, whereas high culture would be the if you know about the what's it called? I want to say Perha, but it's in my book. It's in the back though. Let's see if I could, and I don't have it on the preview obviously, but in the glossary we talk about. I guess in English you call it Sphinx, right? I think it's Haru Mket, but anyway, but the point is that the Sphinx is about this human face over an animal's body, right? It's human face over a lion's body, and in a sense it symbolizes, we're above we conquered, we mastered our animal instincts, but the reality is that humans can be feral, and living in a swamp, that's feral, but our ancestors in a sense are saying, look, we're we're going to follow the ways of essentially the high culture, our humanity, and that's what Set would represent, and that's what we need to go forward on. So yeah, I mean, like I said, this is some deep stuff, you know. This is some deep stuff. If you can't, like, it's jam packed. And this is how I write, by the way. I write in a condensed fashion. So you're gonna see I have this book called Zubiri and Learns of Maat. It's like 50 pages, but it's deep. It's jam packed, you know. And so this is the same. It's you want to just pack it, you know, because it's only what 2 paragraphs or not 2 paragraphs, but you know, it's been an hour of me describing just a handful of paragraphs. But all right, let's see. Our ways, so our way is superior consciousness to uphold a high culture, if you will, right? So this draws the contrast between an African low culture and an African high culture. Isfet also fits when we consider that Ma'at is order and Isfet is disorder. But the context of order and disorder need to be seen in the way of the old way, or even our highway or our high culture. And again, you know, and as I say, there is a low culture among Africans, and there is a high culture among Africans. And it's the high culture that Africa, her Nesu, and her elite must pursue for the benefit of the commoners who can be dragged down and hurt in the low culture, or worse, our enemy's culture. So this is so important, right? Because it could be, right, that a lot of the cultures that we, you know, like in Africa today, right, are low culture. You know what I mean? Or even like, let's say, middle culture, you know? Or just not necessarily the high culture that we have, you know? Because you have to remember that in Kemet or whatever, we're building monoliths, the large earthenworks. We're building, you know, huge statues, you know, that don't even make sense to, like even today, we don't know how. Like the scientists of the Western world don't know how it was done, because it's like this thing weighs 10,000 pounds. They don't have machinery, you know. As far as we know, they don't have machinery. So how are they moving 10,000 pounds? Doesn't make any sense, you know. Like you know, you don't move 10,000 pounds, right? Right? You know. So the thing that's being said, you know, I should have said kilogram, right? I mean, not really, but you know, it's better than that, right? But anyway, but the thing that's being said here is that, you know, we had a way where we were excelling, excellent, the world power, the global power, and that's something that we're not necessarily at today, and so that's why, you know, we have to put value onto these other cultures, or this high culture, this variation of our own culture, you know. A lot of people will say, well, why are you focusing on chemic? Why are you focusing on blah, blah, blah? And it's like, because they outlined that high culture that we otherwise don't have, you know? And unfortunately, what we're doing now is we're absorbing we don't just have a low culture sometimes, but we also absorb the cultures of our enemies, and that's like literally, that's pretty much genocide, you know? So that is, the Nasut and the elite must uphold the way over life, while the commoner may see life, survival, joy, kata, as primary, not entirely grasping the way as the racial recipe for Anku Ja Seneb, life, wealth, and health, right? And this is why I say, you know, realistically speaking, and this is what it is in real life too. It's like, you don't have to worry about the masses, you know, focusing on life and survival and joy. That's fine. What you have to focus on is the leadership focusing on the way. You understand? Because the masses are going, like, the masses may not necessarily always understand, and that's fine. That's good. You know, so this you'll see in all people, which reasons why stressing the actions and intelligence of commoners, the masses, is a wrong pursuit compared to elevating, maintaining, and disciplining Nesutu and elites. So Nesut, this is the plural of Nesut. You know, instead of using S, they use W, right? So the Nesutu and elites, you know, the elites would be the Keru in this scheme, right? But the idea is that you don't want to focus on the masses and the commoners. You know, you don't want to stress their actions. You want to stress elevating, maintaining, and disciplining the leadership of African people, because it is fine to not. It is fine. Oh, I forgot I was on camera. it is fine to it is fine to it's fine what they're doing. You know, it's fine. What you have to do is the leadership has to be on the right path, because when the leadership is on the right path, the resources of the people can benefit more broadly, because it's the leadership that has the resources anyway. You know, the commoner doesn't necessarily have the resources, you know, on an individual level, but the Nesutu does. So this links back to the admonition of Ipuwer. So this is another ancient chemic article or literature in a sense, right? So a description of the intermediate period relating to the absence of Africa's high culture and chemic and the devastation that wrought. Foreigners running amok, unproductive commoners, families fighting family. In many ways, this absence reflects the African Ma'afa up to Africa's present. So the admonitions of Ipuwer, you're going to read that inside of the Book of Power, you know, or you could just look it up. But I would advise you get the Book of Power, because I'm going to also give an introduction and describe it and contextualize it for you, right? But, and I'm going to give you, I think, an African person translated it. So that's like a winner, right? But anyway, so the absence of African high culture, and so you see, this reflects the African Ma'afa up to Africa's present, a testament that Ankobia needs to assume leadership in Africa, particularly as we reflect that Africans in ancient Kenesu, practitioners of African high culture, were a military superpower, amassed abundant wealth, had a normal lifespan of 120 years, and were the envy of the ancient world. Did you see what I just said? A normal lifespan of 120 years. This was what the ancient Africans in Kenesu were. So, you know, there is, like, again, like I said, a Greek document where they approach this ancient person in Ethiopia, and they say, hey, you know, and I guess they're trying to start war, and the ancient Ethiopians are like, get out of here. You know, just be lucky that we're not interested in, you know, your little swamp or whatever, right? But you know, they show their military strength. They give this guy a bow, and they say, when you can pull the string on this bow, then you could come and fight with us. You know, which is, I mean, I would say in retrospect, probably not the best thing to say, but you know, the point was that the guy wasn't strong enough to even do it. And then again, they had a normal lifespan of 120 years. You know, which is still long to this day. You know, and like healthy at 120. You know, which is, you know, and again, this is, and I don't want to say this is too unusual, because there's an account that this Portuguese person goes to somewhere in East Africa, you know, so this is like in the 1500s, and I think there the average lifespan was like either like between 80 and 110. I don't recall off the top of my head, but the point is that it wasn't like, usually, like, realistically speaking, this is probably the saddest thing you're going to hear today, maybe. But usually, normally, African people are supposed to live like past 100, like, or they're supposed to live pretty long. Like even in America, like when you were counting the number of people who lived past, like the centenarians or whatever, you know, people who lived past 100, they if you compare the percentage against percentage, like it was more common for black people, even during, like, you know, segregation and stuff. So it's probably unfortunate that our lifespans are so short today, but that's, you know, that's, again, like I said, you want to go back to adopting an African high culture, because it would give you that the military superpower. It'll give you that abundant wealth. It'll give you that lifespan. It'll give you that global envy. You know, not that, you know, some people say I don't care for global envy. That's fine. You know, there was three other things there. You know, there was three other things. So let's get going. The second proverb on Chaka says they try to claim aliens did it too. Oh yeah, did the 10,000 pounds? Yeah, they try to claim that aliens. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it doesn't really make any sense, you know, or 10,000 kilograms, whatever. The point is that it doesn't really make any sense that things would move, that you could move that kind of stuff without machinery, you know. But we've done that, and if you look at the labyrinth, it's like it's this maze, like, it's just the things that they were doing. Oh my gosh! Like, I'm thinking about, there was this other structure they have where every year on this guy's birthday, like he like his, like there's a Nesu who's inside of this building, right? Like inside this enclosure, with like a little hole in it. And every year on his birthday, the sun would pass over that hole and shine a light on his face. Like what kind of like what? Like it's just like the genius that they had, the genius that our ancestors had, and like today we're not even like we're building like giant statues of you know what I mean, like of our enemies, you know. At best, it's disturbing, you know, to say the least. But let's keep going. The second proverb on individual behavior connects Maat to a self-discipline as against a lack of self-discipline. You know, the use of heart is notable as our heart feels heavier when we feel we do wrong. And this is the symbolism of weighing your heart against Ma'at's feather, as your heart will feel lightest when you feel you do right. So, you know, I already said that. I already explained that. So it's, but it's still like amazing, you know? It really is amazing. Because it's something that you feel as a human, you know, like as you're growing up, you know, you're like, oh, I feel bad, you know, I feel bad, and your heart is feeling it, you know? And you don't think about it. But, you know, our ancestors are like, you know, this is my this is like, because you could see it's a science. It's a science of your human, your connection to the divine, your connection to everything, your connection to the cosmos, you know? This is what Ma'at is about. You know, a lot of us don't see it, a lot of us don't get it. And of course, you know, like I said, you know, if when you go into these other books, you know, like I said, I had the debate, I had the comparison. When you go into these other books, like this is Ceriba book, right? They'll tell you that the different orisha correspond to the different physiological systems, you know? So that Shango corresponds to, you know, oh, but you know, like when they're doing this, it's telling you that our people are developing, you know, a way, an explanation, and of course, you know, I think this is really fundamental, really important for us to get that, you know, in a sense, even the eight spiritualities do the same thing, you know. I was somebody recently linked me this video, and it's in the Discord. So if you join the Discord, you can see this is a potentially interesting channel. And I kind of just put down things that people link. Sometimes I don't get to them, but you know, it's not really. I don't just live for me. You know what I mean? So eventually, I did go and see this video. It's this dude talking about the early Christian whatever, early Christian anti-black whatever. It wasn't like it was interesting, but one of the things is that how they handled this Noah story I just told you about. So in the Noah story, there's also this quote-unquote curse of Ham, where they curse Canaan for whatever. And then here's the thing that they do, right? So as these people are making up this fiction, right, this fictional story to make themselves seem like the son of so there's four sons. There's I don't know what is it? Shem. The son of Shem. They try to make up, say, oh yeah, I'm the son of Shem and all that kind of stuff, right? And so what they do is that they have this Canaan guy. And they say, look, Canaan, and I think Canaan is representing Palestine. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on that, right? But basically they're saying Canaan is the child of Palestine, right? And he's going to now be a servant of, he's going to be a slave to Shem, right? Because of something that Ham did. But if you go further, while they're reasoning and they're debating among themselves, they're making up this fiction, they're saying that Ham used to be used to be white, and they changed his skin to black to make him ugly. You see what I'm saying? And, you know, but basically the reason why I'm saying all this is to say that, you know, when you look at what the Wazungu does with their book that a lot of us decide to defend for some reason, what they do is that they're trying to explain things in the world, and they're giving these stories and they kind of make it seem like everything is bad that isn't that, you know. So the same they did with women, you know. They made up the story of this Adam and Eve, and they said, oh well, Eve she forced Adam to get an apple, and so because of that, she's going to now suffer and be a servant to Adam, you know, or whatever, or just she's going to suffer every like they're trying to explain periods. And basically they're saying, oh, you're a bad person, or your ancestors were bad, or womankind was bad, therefore they're going to have periods. And the same with, you know, Ham. It's like Ham, allegedly Ham, you know, had sex on the ark, or Ham might have done some animalia on the ark, you know, with a dog or something. It's terrible. But the point is that they're like, oh, that's why he's black and ugly, and this. You know, this is the reason. And this is what they're writing. They're making up stuff. So, you know, you can kind of see that, with regard to our ancestors, we're like, hey, look, the reason why your heart feels heavier is because that's like that's Maat, that's this and so forth. So you could kind of see it's just a science in a sense, but they also take the same kind of tradition in a sense, or different a type of tradition, but they do it in a way to make people despise women, make people despise Africans, and then of course fast forward today, we're holding on to the same thing that's inherently despicable. So I thought that would be just something that's interesting to throw in as we discussed Ma'at. So Mchaka says, I had great grandparents that were centenarians. It happened more than people think. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's the book. It's called one of the books that people want to read is 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro. Because in 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro, he J.E. Rogers accesses the U.S. Census. And in the U.S. Census, it will tell you, yeah, there were, like the breakdown of who had the longer living, like who had the more centenarians, even in like 1800 and 1900 and all that, it was black people, or even who passed the physical for like the military, it was black people, which was, which would have been contrary to what you would think, especially considering that they were lynching people, you know what I mean? And they were lynching people, they were giving them inferior foods, they were giving them inferior products. Like realistically speaking, black people should be living longer, and that's almost the crime of the world. But the crime is not on your enemies; the crime is on you, because we're supposed to be building our civilization, not other people, But anyway, let's keep going. So this speaks to the old ways, but also speaks to the belief that the African old way is an inherent way, our way, but it needs to be sought and developed. This then is the purpose behind the elite. So a lot of people are going to be anti-elitists naturally. They're going to hear elite and say, "Oh, yuck, elites! I don't like elites." You have to make a distinction between what an elite is for when they're developed for your own people. The elite of America, because this is the thing right here. White people respect their elites. I saw like this image where it was like the teacher is leading the doctor, the engineer, the teacher, trains kids to become doctors, engineers, police officers, and lawyers, or whatever, right? Or whatever it was. This is the fourth one. But the point is that they don't mind. None of it is like, oh, yuck, those elites. No, those are elites. You understand? And a doctor, I pointed out, the doctor is keeping people sick in order to keep them up, whatever. The engineer is providing these weapons for, the businessman is exploiting labor, blah 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 blah, and the police officer is defending property at the cost of life. The point is that yes, they are like regardless, doctor is a good thing. White people say doctor is a good thing. They say police officer is a good thing, engineer is a good thing, businessman is a good thing. They understand that at the end of the day, it's the elites that really promote and advance their community, their society. So you have to realize that you also want your own elites. You want to train your own elites. You want to train your own doctors. You want to train your own business people. You want to train your own engineers. You want to train your own teachers, right? And you want to train your own law enforcement. So you can't. Although you wouldn't put the police in the law and the elite section, but still, you can't necessarily, demean. You can't be anti-elitist, right? You have to be anti-Eurasian elitist or anti-Ascari elite, but you can't be anti-Ancobia elite, okay? Because when you do that, you screw up. You screw up and you're not fostering the instruments of development. Because when I talked about Pharaoh people do not have doctors or engineers or whatever. And so you might be in cities, but you're not living like you're not Pharaoh. You know what I'm saying? like you're not training your own law enforcement. You're not training your own. That's something that you have to reconsider deeply. And of course, like I said, I got this book. You sit down with this book. Like I said, look how long I'm taking just to work up through this otherwise short essay, right? Or a short speech, right? So anyway, in a situation of chaos and disorder, some people will be more receptive to Ma'at, right? Discipline and order than others. So this is something to recognize too. So this is the purpose of the elite, right? In a situation of Hisfet, chaos, disorder, some people will be more receptive to Ma'at, discipline and order than others. Positions of leadership, authority, and wealth to Tulinde Ma'at, to Shinde Hisfet, and keep Askari, bastards, and hybrids at bay. Oh no, sorry. Order than others, right? So, you know, you gotta realize, like one thing you're gonna realize in life is that not everybody's going to be cut out for everything, right? Or maybe they are, who knows? But the reality is that you don't need everybody to be cut out for everything anyway, you know? Yeah, given the same incentive, like sometimes people are going to distinguish themselves. So, though these few, preferably identified at a young age, can be trained, then placed into positions of leadership, authority, and wealth to Linde Ma'at, to Shinde Isfet, and keep Askari, bastards, and hybrids at bay and powerless. Why the few? You need to expect, particularly in this day and age, that some of the masses will be Askari, bastards, or even hybrids. Like when you form, if you go to any African nation, you're going to have hybrids, you're going to have bastards and Askari, and the reality is that, you know, that's what it is. And sure, you can get rid of them, but how do you propose that? You know, how do you propose getting rid of hybrids and Askari? You know, and will it be by individual effort? The Askari, bastards, and hybrids are already organized to deal with individual threats. So if you're trying to defeat the Askari by yourself, they're organized for that, easily, right? Today's hybrids number over 6 billion. There's over 6 billion hybrids on the planet. We are around 1.5 billion, right? Africans are around 1.5 billion. And are at least 5 million strong militarily speaking. Now remember I told you about how Assyria had 200,000 ironclad soldiers. These people have 5 million strong. Okay, 5 million soldiers. How many soldiers do you have? Right? A few individuals here and there aren't going to cut the 5 million down, let alone the 6 billion, who aren't a monolith and are unlikely to ever be. Right? So a truly concerted effort will require a few race-loyal generals, learned in warfare and proven in military genius, commanding an obedient army. Why obedient? Right? Because a disobedient military will always lose. Right? The goal of the self-governing soldier is a fool's errand and cannot coordinate on a massive scale, let alone see the bigger picture and put the way above life and make the necessary sacrifices and compensate families, friends, and institutions for it. You know, and this is what's important, that, you know, a soldier that dies, you want their family to get something. You know, you don't just want a family to give up a child and nothing comes of it. You know, and of course, like I said, if you want to coordinate on a massive scale, So what that means is that African people, that means that you need that kind of leadership. You know. So Kemet fell to 200,000 centrally coordinated ironclad soldiers. In modern terms, that is an incredibly weak military. There's no individual effort today that could defeat the weak ancient military, particularly at Africa's technological level today, and yet the enemy at present far exceeds those relative weaklings. So what I mean is this, that you as one person, with the exception of, it'll be very hard for you to fight 200,000 people. You know? Very hard for you to fight 200,000 people in iron weaponry. Yeah, very hard. They would have to power, it depends on what kind of weapon you have, but chances are you don't even have that weapon. But again, you're not gonna have to fight 200,000 people in iron. You're gonna have to fight people with modern militaries. You understand? So you need to be insane to oppose the necessity of a learned hierarchy in war, especially in light of the actual enemies organized on a massive scale. The countries in question, like when we talk about global politics, right? When we talk about America, France, England, China, India, whatever. When we're talking about these nations, we're talking about militaries that can coordinate on a massive scale. You know, and because they can coordinate on a massive scale, you have to say to yourself, look here. It's upon me, it behooves me to be able to coordinate on a massive scale as well. So, let's keep going. The third proverb speaks to Ma'at as an order, even followed by the Necharu, and thus the cosmos, right? So melanin 100% says, depending on the whites, will be the fall of the black race. Yeah, you sure will be. You know what I mean? Right. All right. So the third power speaks to Ma'at as an order, even followed by the Neteru, and thus the cosmos. This is interesting and core to understand. Right. So Ma'at is an order that even the Neteru, even the cosmos itself follows. Right. So this is interesting and core to understand. The African concept of order isn't merely individual; it's macroscopic and microscopic as well. The stars are in order. The atoms are in order. Your physiology is in order. The Neteru are in order. Everything has an order, and in turn, a disorder. As with Ma'at and the Ma'at Confederation, the Neteru often mirror and personify the order of reality. Some Neteru will represent the human liver, some the circulatory system, some the brain, and in turn, the same Neteru will represent animals with similar functions and characteristics, or even atomic, subatomic, stellar, and superstellar phenomena, to link and express everything as connected and the root of African to link, express everything as connected and the root of African spirituality as science and scientific learning. See, the root of African spirituality is science and scientific learning. These Neteru, when you see these names, Ra, Heru, Asar, and even as you go, like I said, the Orisha, can't remember what the Akan called, but the Abasam, there you go, the Abasam. These represent science, scientific learning, superatomic, subatomic, superstellar characteristics, and they're represented by animals. The Tahuti. You think about Tahuti, you think about the baboon, the intelligent baboon, right? But you see that it represents that Tahuti also personifies this intelligence, this massive intelligence that we have. Those kind of things. So it's so critical that we get to this, right? So this is above and beyond the cerebral in the sense that the order cannot be known through mere thought. It's observed, experienced, acted on, and active. This is instrumental, particularly when it comes to how we order ourselves. There's an ideal, but it's incomplete. What was the Maat Confederation, or what is Africa's high culture, and how would they handle the situation before us? We don't know per se, but we can try to figure it out. But when the next situation comes up, we're in the same predicament. We can only use our story, reality, and thus science as a foundation for our activities. This is another reason why you have elites in Nesutu to handle our affairs, those learned and committed to our way. You learn the basis of governance, but then governance is a lived experience. It's not finished. It's people deciding the fate of people. This is what government is. It's people deciding the fate of people. Much like the suggested projects. So the suggested projects is an essay later on in the Book of Power, right? Or like, a brief description of different things that I believe that our people should accomplish, right? So one of them, the suggested projects, is uncovering the Maat Confederation, right? So the Sahara is sand mostly, right? We should, but if you look at the sand, for instance, if you look at the cover of this book, you can kind of see that there are like structures, but they're buried under sand, right? So what that means is that why that's important is that basically how do you we want to see these structures, right? But you have to do an earthen work. Like this is going to take resources. You're going to have to send a team of people to uncover it, and that team of people have to report and put that knowledge where we can access it. Because like now, like for instance, if a French team does it, they're going to keep it in France or England, or what? They're going to keep it among themselves, and it's not going to be accessible to us as a people. So we have to do it ourselves. And so now here's the question: so people to decide how to go about with that. What part of the Sahara to focus on? How can that be done? Or even the other Sahara suggested project of reversing or slowing down the spread of the Sahara. How is that done? Is it a priority? How many resources can we afford to put into that project at this moment? Do we have a more pressing issue? Is our effort working? None of this is known in advance per se, right? None of this is known in advance, but that's why you have a government. That's why you have a group of people to, like humans, real humans, to settle it. You can't settle it off of something that you think it's just not cognitive. It's not just cerebral. It is active. It is something that you have to do. It's like you do the experiment. That's the element of that's the element of civilization or of governance and science, right? So Hold on a second. All right, so do we have a more pressing issue? Is our none of this is none of the events, but you want individuals at the moment to handle it. That's what I'm saying. You want individuals in the moment to handle it, right? This is why goals like Pan-Africanism, as advocated by individuals, don't go as far as the goal of Pan-Africanism, as handled by nations. You have to accept, like with the military example, that coordinating a national effort, as opposed to relying on individual efforts, is the more potent endeavor. And like with the military example, the government of Africans should be in the hands of selected, trained, spiritual, and scientific, race-loyal elites who, unlike commoners, don't mix with the Scotty, bastards, or hybrids unless in the interest of the Ankobia nation, whatever that may entail. Whatever that may entail, you know? So this is the difference. You know, and of course, like, you know, you might say, well, what do you mean, whatever that may entail? There's no reason. Well, like, let's say you a spy. You know what I mean? If you're a spy, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna say Jacob the Joke was a spy, but if Jacob the Joke was you know, with a white woman for reasons of, you know, reporting intelligence, that's different. You know what I mean? Now, of course, I don't think that was an example, but I'm saying that, you know, in the future, you may have that. You know, you may have, you know, spies who have to, you know, assume a different life. You know, who knows? So you can't say one way or another. You know, again, it's like humans. We're dealing with humans. We're dealing with reality, not ideality. You know, in reality, and that's what I'm saying. Now here's something that's also important. You know, we tend to go about Pan-Africanism as individuals. It's not going to work. How are you going to unite a continent of governments with no involvement from the governments themselves? You know, unless you as individuals assume those governments, right, and then unite. That's also a smart way. But outside of that, you know, you as individuals, you as commoners, you as, you know, unimportant. No, it's not gonna work. You know, and people are not gonna like you. You know, you're like, oh, I'm on computer and I'm typing away and I'm telling you, yeah, we gotta unite. You know, this is what we're gonna do. You know, it's not gonna do anything. It's not going to do anything compared to, let's say, what Nyerere, you know, Nyerere being an individual, but he's head of a government. And he's like, you know what? Tanganyika and Zanzibar, we're one country now. We're Tanzania, you know? Or he says Tanzania, or he says Uganda and Kenya come together, we're forming the East African Federation, period. Right? But then the person in Uganda says, nah. Or the person in Kenya says, nah. But all the same, right? All the same, the point is that you say this, right? The point is that if the person in Uganda said, yeah, sure, let's do this, right? It's done, right? The person in Uganda, the person in Kenya said, yeah, let's do this. It's done. If you go back, you know, you go to Bit of Medicine podcast, like I said, you know, you go to Bit of Medicine, Harsh Reality, and Queen's Council. You go to them, but the reason why I brought up Bit of Medicine just now, I said, you know, I was on his program and we were reading a article about, you know, Nkrumah sabotaging the East African Federation, and that's it. You know, like him as the leader of a nation sabotaging the East African Federation. That's like I'm saying, the influence that you will have is that much greater in the national capacity with the resources. Because again, Nkrumah is now spending the resources of Ghana, right, to finance and fund a bunch of saboteurs in Uganda or in Kenya, right? He's using these resources. Now, if he was just using words, if he just said, yeah, I don't like this idea, you know, it's different from spending like $100,000, giving somebody $100,000 to vote no. You know? That's the elites. But of course, you know, like I would say, he's like an Ascati elite, but you know, I don't want to hear that. But anyway, let's keep going. Anyway, thanks everybody for the likes and the comments. Very appreciated. Let's go. Now here's a larger picture, right? Defend our way, defeat another's is a universal belief system, even outside of what's traditionally conceived as humanity. Even outside, you can hear that, right? Even outside of what is traditionally conceived as humanity. One could surmise, for instance, that the hyena and the lion hold this same viewpoint. Okay? Defend our way, defeat another. When you look at, even just look at nature, you sit down and you look at the hyena, and you look at the lion, and you look at them at odds with each other. Why are they at odds? Because they have different ways, in a sense. You know, I mean, obviously they're different creatures as well, but they're looking at, but They don't even adopt the ways of the other. You know, the hyena. If you read my if you saw when I was reading that when I was writing that masculinity, the masculinity essay, you'll see that the way how the hyenas operate versus the way that the lions operate are two different are so different, but they defend their way and they defeat the others. You know what I'm saying? The lions will not. The lions do not try to adopt the ways of the hyena, and the hyenas don't try to adopt the ways of the lion. You know, even though they could. You know, but importantly, it's the viewpoint of our enemies, right? Namely, and so but it's very important to understand that the viewpoint of Wazungu is also to defend his way and defeat others, right? And I mean, for those of you who saw the podcast yesterday, make sure you read this Urugu series because that's pretty good too. I like Urugu, but I like the book Urugu. We should clarify that right away. Somebody gonna soundbite that. Somebody gonna soundbite that. I'll be like, wait, I said that. Anyway, I like the book Urugu. All right. So anyway, so importantly is the viewpoint of our enemy. So the enemy, they defend their culture and defeat another culture. Like central to, if you look at, when you read Urugu, you're going to see she's talking about white folk centrally attack and assault the cultural other, right? And that's something that we have to grasp. Hold on a second. Okay. So disorder to blah 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 blah. So lion, let's go. So namely, they have a sense of order centered around their old ways that would be disorder to us, but is order and inherent to them, and verily put the disorder above above life, yours and theirs. You see what I'm saying? This is, oh my gosh. All right. So Wazungu has an old way too. You see what I'm saying? Wazungu has an old way too that they are centering, that's their culture, they're centering it, and they put their culture above your life and above their own life. It's more important for instance, like what Marbani would probably say is white supremacy or white supremism in a sense, right? But it's more important for them to advocate that principle, right, than it is for them to advocate even for their own lives. Right? If there's a white person who is saying, you know what, let's do some black supremacy or whatever, or even let's not do this white supremacy, they discard that white person. Right? That's what their leadership does. So they're gonna have these commoners that do some dumb stuff. It doesn't matter. What's important is that like if you look at, like, you go on Reddit, that's the white people's commoners. They're doing dumb stuff all the time. All the time. Nobody cares. What's important is what are their leaders doing? What is Hillary Clinton saying and doing? What is Obama saying and doing? What is Biden saying and doing? Not just them, but the Congress people as well. Huckabee or Sanders or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, this requires a further explanation of our way and their way. Our way is reciprocity, and their way is exploitation. This is central to understand. Reciprocity, Maat, is giving and receiving in comparable measure. Exploitation is taking in incomparable measure. I cannot overemphasize this. Their social organization in its entirety and throughout bends towards an exploitative society. Our social organization, when we practice it, bends towards a reciprocal society. It is a fundamental difference that fully explains everything in the social order of our enemies and the social order of the Ankobia. The enemies' elite exploit their commoners. When the Askari are in charge of African land, because the Askari follow our enemy's way, the Askari exploit Africa and Africa's commoners. See, you guys call it, you're trained to call it capitalism. Don't bother calling it capitalism. It's white folks practicing their way. That's what it is. It's just their way. Because if you look at feudalism, it was the same thing. Right? If you look at slavery, it's the same thing. They are exploiting, they're based around a system of exploitation. Okay? Anyway, so, and the Askari exploit Africa and Africa's commoners. This oftentimes allows for hybrids to exploit Africa and her commoners as well. But it needs to be understood that in the Eurasian purview, there's no way exploitation wouldn't occur. Right? All Eurasian ideologies and practices are centered around the premise of exploitation. All Eurasian ideologies and practices are centered around the premise of exploitation. All of them. To adopt the Eurasian way or his beliefs is to adopt an exploitative way. in everything from their a-spirituality, that's their religion, to their revolutionary ideas, that's their, socialism and all that stuff, from their relationship to their family structures, from their relationships to their family structures, everything in this way, exploitation is the Eurasian asili or way of being. It's their adoption which truly describes the Ascati and the misrule in Africa by those particularly trained in the Eurasian way, whether in Eurasianist educational institutions or by Eurasians themselves. And there's no way around this. Eurasianism will always be a plight to Africans because Eurasianism is, in part, a war against Africanism. That is the law of Eurasianism. From pedophilia, polygamy, miscegenation, and other dissexualities, to chattel slavery, theft, prostitution, genocide, corruption, katha wakatha, there will be in Africa, these will be in Africa as long as Eurasianism is in Africa, particularly as long as Africa's elites are Ascati. So what's most important, if you just pay attention, what's most important is that Africa's elites are not Ascati. Now some people might be like, wait, what about polygamy, right? There's another essay on that, right? Miscegenation, now so if you're saying what about miscegenation, something wrong with you. If you say what about pedophilia, something else wrong with you. But child slavery, theft, prostitution, just yesterday in fact, we in Yarugu, and remember Ali said, yeah, these white folk brought prostitution into Africa. Because if you look at the family structures, because even polygamy, right? Now, not the same Europeans, because remember, this is Eurasians, not Europeans, right? So Chick on the Joke would tell you that polygamy increased, or polygamy became a thing, actually, after the Almoravids, I don't know how you call it, but they basically, after the Muslims settled in Africa, in a sense, right? Or after the Muslim way settled in Africa. So and before that, what you would see, and it's something you will see if you go to a museum. Just go to a freaking museum. You go to a museum and you look at the African art section, and you'll see the balance of male and female, right? You just, everything is there, and you see the balance of male and female. So up to a certain point, like before 800 AD or something, right? You're going to just see, or 800. What do I call it? I think it's, I can't. All right, but anyway, the point is that after 800 AD, you're going to see the balance of men and women. Then after that, you're going to see different family structures. You're going to see miscegenation. You're going to see you might see pedophilia. I don't know, but you're definitely going to see polygamy. Again, the child slavery, the theft, prostitution, genocide, corruption. These are all things that the elite of Africa. So the main thing that you want to do is you want to create Africa's elites to not be Ascati. Ascati is the lowest stage of African consciousness. You would know that from the Pro-Black Compendium. Otherwise, the highest stage of African consciousness would be the Ancobia. So that's the consciousness. That's the consciousness that's conscious of Maat or whatever, or African spirituality in general. But that's the difference. So let's see. Chaka says you like the Rugu. Yeah, I know. I gotta figure out how to delete this thing. All right, Melanin 100% says yes. Their culture and way of life and doing things is manic to use. Or I think you meant manic to us, but yeah, that's the thing. It's like you have to realize that, or you have to recognize that their culture of exploitation is what it is. And it's the thing that you want to see too. Like you might say, well, what about polygamy? Blah blah. People inside of polygamy relationships know about the kind of exploitation that goes on there. Miscegenation, maybe not. But pedophilia, definitely. You gotta know pedophilia is about exploitation. Prostitution is about exploitation. Genocide, taking people's land, pretty much. Corruption, you know what that is. Anyway, let's go. So then, what is the ideal? Ethics centers around warfare and the capacity to defend your way or defeat your enemies, right? And this is, again, like I said, this is universal. This is white folk are defending their way and defeating their enemies' way. So that's what again, people are talking about Abrahamic religions and all that kind of stuff. That's really the basis of that thing, is to defeat your culture, to destroy your culture, to make you a heathen and therefore need to be saved, from your heathenism, But your heathenism is your culture, you know what I mean? So it's like, they're trying to save you from your culture. So it's like phenomenal that anybody would actually adopt it, but it's whatever. Ethics centers around warfare, blah, blah, blah. The way is more important than life, okay? The Eurasians' a-spiritualities, as religions, either coincidentally or intentionally confuse this ethical narrative on warfare. I say coincidentally, with understanding that the Eurasian beliefs derive from Amenhotep Nane and Askari Nesu, who promoted peace among Africans, bastards, and hybrids in the form of Atenism. Notably, he commanded the mightiest army in the world, but had surrounded himself with Askari, bastards, hybrids, and commoners, so he didn't use it against rebels or threats. His own son had to bring back the worship of Aman, the law of Maat. So that's actually interesting. So this is, like I said, this is when we ruled. You pick it up, you can read about Amenhotep. Matter of fact, I wonder if I should even do that. Hold on a second. Let me just see if I want to go to the, like, here's the index, which is pretty good. I don't have an index, so I can't think. So Amenhotep the Fourth, pages 195 to 196. Just quickly, let's see if it's actually relevant. 196. Yeah. So you can read about Amenhotep the Fourth. He's best known as a religious reformer, great man according to J.A. Rogers. He preached the gospel of perfect love, brotherhood, and truth. 1,300 years before Christ, and 2,000 years by the short chronology, and 2,000 years before Muhammad, he taught the doctrine of the one God. 3,000 years before Darwin, he sensed the unity that runs through all living things, and he was the richest man on earth. He's called Akhenaten. Akhenaten, Aten meaning like he's about Atenism, right? You go forward. He made a place called Akhenaten, and then he changed his name from Amenhotep the Fourth to Akhenaten. He named his son Tutankhaten, and then after his son, so you see right here, it says, during this difficult period, Tutankhaten inherited the throne as a boy. Aya, his chief priest, exercised authority over his region. Aya led a non-violent restoration of Amenism. In 1478 BC, Waset, the city of Amen veneration, regained its former status as capital. The young pharaoh changed his name to show his change in religious devotion. Tutankhaten became Tutankhamen, right? Tutankhamen, right? So you know Tutankhamen, that's him, right? The life and treasures of his young man has attracted the imagination of many writers, blah, blah, blah. But you could kind of see the paragraph before that. It says, by 1493 or 1492 BC, the king's religious revolution was complete. He changed his name from Amenhotep IV to Akhenaten and instituted a revolution in Egyptian art. Gone was the old style of presentation, and some of the new status. Akhenaten is portrayed as a father and mother to the nation, with an appropriate synthesis of male and female body shapes, right? Weird. However, all was not going well within the empire. Egypt was losing its grip on Asian colonies, right? I think, let me see if there was a little bit more, because this is actually pretty important, right? At some point, they talk about how he had these Asians in his community. So it says, so this is J. Rogers saying, Lord Supreme of the then civilized world, with the mightiest army at his command, he preached the gospel of peace and preached it so consistently that when subjected nations rebelled, he refused to attack them, right? So he said, living centuries before King David, he wrote Psalms as beautiful as the jade, blah, 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 blah. Basically, a lot of religion is based around, a lot of Wazungu religions are based around this guy who was pretty much the ancient Askari, right? So right here, it says, having dispatched the high priest of Amen to oversee a quarrying expedition, he promoted the minor deity Aten to the position of sole deity throughout the whole country. In Karnak, he built a temple to his deity, enforcing a more strict monotheism. The king surrounded himself with a new set of officials. Many of these were foreigners or Egyptians of the lower order. In this way, the Aman priesthood civil service was sidestepped. Unhappy with Waset, the king built a new capital further north called Akhenaten, and there in that capital, let's see if there's anything important here. Not really. But anyway, the point being that, yeah, I think that's actually enough. Oh wait, let me see. After this, they introduced a literary language that specialized vocabulary used transcribing foreign. No. Yeah, I think that the Asians had a bigger whatever. But the point being that this is where the religion. So I said, coincidentally, it could be coincidentally that bastards. I mean that these aspiritualities are confusing us. The ethical narrative on warfare, because this person, Amenhotep Yadane, was an Askari in a suit who promoted that stuff. And even though he had he was even doing that transgender stuff, apparently, or not transgender. I shouldn't say transgender, but he was doing that, weird, like what's he doing, right? Like he was representing himself as a man and a woman, and among other things. So, and the monotheism, like again, like I said, Kemet had different gnomes with different Nesut, and Amenhotep Yanane was like, no, we're gonna have this one. So I don't know where he got this Atenism from, right? He could have gotten it from the Asians. I don't know, but even if you look into, I guess it was Freud, right? Freud's last book is about how Moses, right, is like they got their belief in Yahweh and all that stuff from this Atenism, right? So this is what something that Freud is saying, right? Like this would be, and not to say that Freud's an authority or anything, but just to recognize that, yeah, this is actually this is like it's possible maybe Moses was one of the priests of Amenhotep Yanane, okay, or it's possible that the story is based around that kind of thing, because you're like, oh, who's kicking these people out of Egypt? Like where's that story coming from? So maybe another people adopted the story, learning the history of the world, and saying, you know what, we're going to adopt this monotheism, this brotherhood of humankind. Like this is the real belief system that we should have. Because another thing you want to remember is that white people were not allowed into Africa's universities up to a certain point, and that point was when the Persians were able to defeat Kemet in a war, and part of the negotiations afterwards was that some white people could be allowed into the school. That's why you had a lot of Greeks eventually getting into the school. So it's a really complex history. I don't recall where I read that or where I heard that, but it's a really complex, world history, because now when they're studying this stuff, they start making up stories, and so maybe this person, Amenhotep Yanane, stands out to them, and the monotheism and the brotherhood of human. But this brotherhood thing really does corrupt people, and this is something that our ancestors fought against. So, and again, even the monotheism is something that we fought against, because again, the universe is not like the universe. Like if the natural rule is not just one natural rule. You know what I'm saying? It's a large part of us is looking into our ancestors and our ancestral ways, and what our ancestors, our personal ancestors, did for us. And if you understand like just going through life and humanity, and you should, but if you stop and think about it, you wouldn't go to this monotheist thing. But anyway, like essentially monotheism itself is against our way, but a lot of people are not ready to hear that. So I'm not ready to say it. You know what I'm saying? All right. So notably, he commanded the mightiest army in the world, but he surrounded himself with Ascati, bastards, hybrids, and commoners, so he didn't use it against rebels or threats. His own son had to bring back the worship of Maat. So you see, I wasn't making that up. It was like in the freaking history book, right? The law of Maat. Either way, and you see how it corresponds with the law of Maat. Defeat is fat. Defeat the ways of your the son brings back a Maat. And you saw how it even said, he went to Waset, he made Waset the capital. Okay. It's just not, I'm not making it up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not making it up. You might not get all of it, you might not understand all of it from the writing, because I'm trying to be concise. But, a part of this writing is for you to think more broadly, and then when you go and do your own investigation, because you might not just want to read Wenry Rules. You might want to read something else. You might want to read J.A. Rogers. You might want to read something else. But you're going to come across the same truism, regardless. You're going to come against the same truism. Or you can reflect on the things that you've engaged in the past. But it's very important that you engage the material. So either way, and that's why I said, just get this book. Go get it, right? I want to see some sales after I sign out. After I sign off. Let's do it. All right. Either way, at present, even the top African minds, in their deep confusion, find resisting admirable and fighting honorable. These are passive activities like self-defense, but once upon a time, aggression, Tushinde is offense was natural and normal. So it's like, at present, even the top minds among us, right, are like, we should resist and we should fight, you know. But it's like you want to aggress, you want to be the offender, to be honest, right? So to reiterate the point made in the Pro-Black Compendium, Africans as far back as the Maat Confederation would travel into Europe and attempt to kill Western Eurasians off. So this is something that we don't really know about our world history, but yeah, we used to travel. Like, this is Maat Confederation, so this was like way back when Sahara was there. But they used to go and kill white folk. These people buried under, they would kill them. They would hunt them like whatever. So they bore the symbol of the dragon on their armor, and up until recently, Western Eurasians feared wealthy, ferocious, rampaging dragons because of this. You see what I'm saying? Like today we know about the fantasies about dragons, so on and so forth, but this is what it is. And there's this book, I linked it in the Discord, right? There's this book, this white boy wrote it, but he was like, yeah, the fear of the dragon is based off of black folk coming in and fighting us. And one of the things that they hated, the reason why they hated black people or blackness was because of this. You know what I mean? Like, but that's, again, like I said, a whole other conversation. You got to do your own investigation. And I think the name of the book was Great Initiates. But you want to do your own investigation because, you know, you want multiple sources. You don't just want one source. You want multiple sources. And if you even care for it. Well, let's keep going. The ancient Africans may have killed off the Neanderthal. You know what I mean? A progenitor of Eurasians, or at least assisted in it. This aggression on our foreign foes is what an African ethical system actually entails. On top of purging or disempowering the Ascati, bastards, and hybrids in our midst, so you know, you don't want Ascati, bastards, and hybrids to be either powerful or even there. You know, you don't want them in your country. And of course, you know, you might not necessarily purge all of them, but you definitely don't want them to be powerful in your country. And that's something that we see with regards to white people and black people in America. You know, we're here, but they don't want us powerful here. You know, so one of the things that really tiffed them about Obama, who would be considered a bastard in a sense, but what thing that tiffed them about Obama was that he had power in their country. So then they got the most slimy white person, you know, to replace him. But anyway, core to an African society are three components: an understanding of our way, a capacity of enforcing it, and a capability of defending it. You want to know what our way is, you want to enforce our way, and you want to be capable of defending our way. So in this sense, the Nasut elite army and commoner social organization describe the blameless society that we organized in the ancient world, why we did and why we must. So to live our way, Africa needs commoners. To enforce our way over life, Africa needs elites. And to defend our way, Africa needs an army. And an Nasut studied in our way with custody of the land brings it all together. So this is a social organization. Now, if you read The Republic, you'll know what I'm talking about. This is Plato's book, The Republic, and he's talking about what is the ideal society? What does it look like, right? And essentially, this is what the ideal society looks like, or this is what African societies look like. You know, you have the Nasut, the elite, the army, and the commoners. And the commoners lived in our way, of course, but the people who enforced our way were the elites, and the people who defended our way were the army, and the people who led us and, you know, kept it all together were the Nasut. And then now I'm going to go into why. The Nasut centralizes the different classes and intelligence of Africa. The Nasut is the custodian of our land, our way, and the commoner, the elite of the elites, and the general of the generals. Taseti, the first kingdom, was named the land of the bow for its army, and a part of that army, led by the elite Asar, eventually formed a separate kingship atop the rich soils of Chemic among the commoners already present. This is our story. You know, it's a reciprocal order because the commoner supplies labor for protection, technology, a greater standard of living, a longer lifespan, respected land rights, and shared wealth. Right? This is what we're bringing to Africa. When we're talking about Pan-African nationalism, we're talking about for the common people. We're going to bring protection, technology, a greater standard of living, a longer lifespan, respected land rights, and shared wealth. Right? For the elite, we're going to grant leadership for education. You know, we're going to grant leadership, but the education. They're going to educate. A support network, land use, and greater wealth. Right? The army provides protection, aggression, and land acquisition for sustenance. The army is going to get sustenance, family care, wealth, compensation, safer, and more intelligent endeavors and effective equipment. So you're going to equip these people, and you're going to give them, strategic ways of accomplishing the goals at hand and keeping our people safe and so on and so forth, right? And so they're going to give us the protection and the aggression and the land acquisition, that's the point. And then the Nasut provide direction, a central forum. A central forum is so important, right? A central forum basically means that, if I'm coordinating something, right, I need to know everything that's going on, okay? And so if you know something, you got to give it to, and you have to give it to somebody. You should give it to me, because I'm trying to coordinate stuff. You see what I'm saying? If there's nowhere for everybody to go and give it to, then maybe you might give it to, somebody else, right? You might give it, let's say, M'Chaka. You might give it to M'Chaka, right? And M'Chaka might not tell me. And then, so if I'm trying to coordinate something, and M'Chaka don't tell me, right? Or even, this individual, contacts M'Chaka, and then, or let you say, oh, well, what about if he were to contact everybody? Contact M'Chaka, contact me, contact this, so on and so forth. It don't matter. Like you giving more work for let's say it's a spy in UK, right? It's a spy in the UK. They write in letters, so on and so forth. Now you want them to write, 500 letters. Instead of trying to find a way to send it to me, have me decode it, you want to have 500 different people. It don't make no sense. You just want a central forum, okay? You want a central forum. This is where I can say in business, this is where the CEO comes in hand, right? This is where because again, and this is why, like you say, the CEO, right? You'll say you're heading a business, right? One person with vision, right, can take the business further. Now, if you say, well, what about if we have 10 people with vision? Now, when the visions now don't coincide, right, then there's a problem, right? Because you have limited resources. And so if the resources are if one of them has a better idea, then the resources got to go towards the best idea. Right? Now, you're not going to know which one was the best idea, but that's why you would choose the CEO that you believe is the best. And that's why, for Wazungu, for instance, Wazungu has the structure of stockholders, right? So stockholders are the ones who elect the CEO. You understand? Or can fire the CEO. Because they're saying, hey, look, I'm invested in this organization, and therefore, I want the best person available. And if you showed yourself to not be the best person, we're going to replace you. But the point is that you have one person. You don't have a million people. But again, that's what I'm saying. That's the suit provides a direction, a central forum, a reasoned distribution of land, and accordance of ancestral wisdom, and a coordinated nation for education, sustenance, land ownership. So the Nasut will get education, sustenance, land ownership, and the greatest wealth and esteem, right? So every class thereby gives and receives in comparable measure and lifts each other up. This is the model of the Nasutu of our African past who managed high culture. Okay? So that's important. Let's go on. The alternative, without the Nasut, the elites or the army, were easy picking for Eurasians and always will be. The ancient Nasut Keti Yasaba told his son as much during the first intermediate period. So I'm going to also have Keti Yasaba's words in the Book of Power. So like I said, go get it, right? Told his sons, like if you ain't ordering it right now, I hope it's only because you're listening to me. You know what I mean? But let's get going. The ancient Nasut Keti Yasaba told his son as much during the first intermediate period. Even stateless societies, which could command an army at the request of family leaders or age-grade commanders, can't wield the necessary power to withstand the Nasut model. So there are, even today, you'll see like age-grade communities and so on and so forth, but they can't stand up against the Nasut model. The Nasut model is the model that Wazungu is copying right now as well. Instead of all these, they're more exploitative, obviously, but instead of Nasut, presidents or whatever, or prime ministers. Instead of elites, they have, just regular people. I mean, just regular professionals, and, the commoners or whatever, peasants or what have you. I mean, in another sense, if you look at the feudal economy that they're based off of, you would see the king, the monarch, the king, the what was it? The lords, you know, and then the peasants. You get what I'm saying? And the lords have the knights and soldiers and so on and so forth. You get what I'm saying? So this is the model that of course they base everything off of, but it's based off of what's the best model for humans to organize in, and that's the model that African people had. And that's something that everybody understands. All right, so the alternative within the Nesu, stateless societies, so on and so forth. This is the difference between nations and populations, and why populations never stood a chance against nations. You know, this is what we see in Africa today, where you know the Ascati, the handful of Ascati can rule over the people to a large extent. Look at the Congo documentary that is linked in the Discord, right? There are guys who can force children, or not force children, but the children like 13 years old, 12 years old, are slinking and hiding away from the camera as they're going into these mines with limited oxygen. Limited oxygen that sometimes collapse and kill people regularly. Little children, kids dying to get little minerals, little coltan minerals, and they're getting pennies for it, right? They're getting pennies for it, and their people are suffering. They can't whatever, but the businessman ahead of it has like millions of dollars, right? A day or a week. He's making bank, right? And all he has to do is finance a few security, right? Army, remember the army? A few bodyguards, and he can get away with, you know, sending kids to their death. You see what I'm saying? Because you can't do anything as a population against an army, against an organized military force, and that's just what it is. So why the population never stood a chance against nations? You know, so this is what's happening in Africa today. This is what's happening while I'm talking about this. There's a child in the mines finding coltan so that they can power. You know, so it's a superconductor so that your phone can operate quickly. You know what I mean? The electricity flowing through your phone is going, you know, at very fast speeds because of the child that is doing this stuff right now. You know what I mean? So yeah, you want to reorganize our people, and you want to follow that reorganization according to the best model, right? So the first recorded nation, Taseti, overruns Kemet's population, right? Kemet becomes a kingship and eventually contests against Taseti. So that's really important to understand. You know, Taseti is a nation, right? The kingdom, right? And there's a population in Kemet, right? And there's a bunch of, you know, Pharaoh people, maybe, who knows, right? Like Wazungu, Eurasians are there, Africans are there too. But, you know, they're probably like fighting these people all the time. Who knows, right? So, Taseti overruns them, takes them over. Upper Kemet, Lower Kemet, and you know, if you look at the images of the ancient, I think of the first king of Kemet, he's bashing the head of these white folk, right? He's showing how many white folk he captured, you know, like that's how easy it is to overrun a population, right? But then Kemet now becomes a kingship, right? And then it's able to fight against Taseti. You see what I'm saying? It tells you what kind of model of government is optimal. Because when they didn't have this nation there, they were overrun. When they do have this nation there, they can stand up on their own 2 feet. And this is something that we have to understand as a people. That there's a model for us that we can stand up on our own 2 feet. Right? So for eons, Eurasians do not challenge African supremacy. But they become a challenge after they adopt the nation model. So there are, for centuries, for thousands of years in fact, right? White folk, everybody knows, like the ancient, like I said, the letter of, the advice to Merikari is something that you want to read, and it's also in the Book of Power, right? But the advice to Merikari, Kenti Yasaba is telling his son, Merikari, that he's like, beware, these Asians, they always fighting. They're always, like these white folk. He's like, the Eurasians are always fighting, they're always trying to get us, but they never can conquer us. Because, you know, whatever, right? Never say never, right? They learn the nation model, and when the nation model, that's when they become a threat to us. Before that, they were just people who would harass you on the road, you know? But after they adopt the nation model, so it's upon you to, this is what is meant by nationalism, to adopt the nation model again. So eventually their nation model overruns ours, but after centuries of struggle. So when we return to populations in the pre-colonial, post-chemic era or African low culture, just recognize it, right? They overrun us in a matter of years, not strictly for technological differences. Okay? We return, this is pre-colonial Africa, is post-chemic Africa, as African low culture. Right? We return to the populations instead of the nations. Now, obviously, there were empires in Africa. Those would have been the nations. But there were also populations, and they were overrun in a matter of years. Okay? Years. As opposed to, like I said, letter of Merikari, they were saying, yeah, these people, they're not doing nothing. They can't do anything with us. In fact, we were building civilizations on top of them. You know, the Indus Valley civilization is us building civilizations on top of them. Sumer is us building civilizations on top of them, not them building civilizations on top of us. You know? So Ma'at as war against his Fet, or his Fet as war against Ma'at, needs to be understood by Ankobia, looking to socially organize communities and eventually nations. Is Fet will war against us. Understand that. Is Fet will war against us. Okay. We need to war against his Fet. The struggle isn't over until Isfet is over, and Isfet will not struggle against us until Ma'at is over. See what I'm saying? They want to destroy Ma'at. This is why you don't go into their spiritualities, because their spiritualities go against our way. They go against Ma'at. They are going to war against Ma'at. You have to war against Isfet. The battle wages that we need to organize that victory in words, works, wars, and was. That's power. Our enemies will to exploit us. That's not a problem as long as we organize to make them unable. There's an ancient tale on Eurasians going into the heart of Kennesu, seeking to spy, and this is the story I was telling you earlier. And the Kennesu detect this, laugh at their effort, and cordially tell the Eurasians they do not possess the firepower, and that they should feel unfortunate that the Kennesu, or they should feel fortunate that the Kennesu do not desire their lands at this moment. The Kennesu laugh at the short Eurasian lifespan of 80 years and vaunt their 120. Their superior diet and the clean springs they can bathe in. They then send the Eurasians back to their king to relay the message. Who cares of the enemy's motives when you are stronger? I'm going to say that again. Who cares what the enemy's motives when you are stronger? You will only be stronger when you organize it. You are moral when you are strong. You understand? See, you're not moral when you're not strong. You're moral when you are strong. We are Taseti. We are Ankobi. We must embrace being the military superpower once more. Then we will be blameless like our ancestors before us. Ma'at nivita didi ya disfet. Disfet nivita didi ya ma'at. Okay? That is the law of Ma'at. Okay, Melanin 100% retracted some statement. But that's really the gist of it. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. This is the end of that chapter. That was what we. That's what we do. This is again, like I said, this is in the Book of Power. Make sure you get yourself a copy. Sit down, read it. Try to understand that at the end of the day, what we are about, you know, what we need to concentrate ourselves on, what we need to focus on. You know, it's outlined in this essay, or this speech in a sense. But, and all the stuff that's here, you know, it took 2 hours, but it's there. And there's so much more to consider and learn about. But as far as that's concerned, I appreciate you joining me today for this episode 13 of Reading the Book of Power. I'm going to say this, that I'm not going to be here next week. Next week, I'll be here the week following. So, you know, rewatch this. Try to really grasp it. Try to really understand it. And I appreciate you for listening. I'm going to shout out the 3 people. I was going to say 2, but a bit of medicine came through. So I'm going to shout out the 3 people who were in the comments. Obviously, Melanie 100%, Chaka 97, a bit of medicine podcast. And of course, I'm going to advise you, you know, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Make sure you subscribe to the other channels. Make sure you subscribe to Bit of Medicine podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the Harsh Reality podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the Queen Council podcast. Because we want a big network. We want more people in the network. We want more people to engage. And make sure you subscribe to KWZ Radio as well, right? But you want these sort of platforms, these sort of voices to have that to have that recognition, or to have that popular. But basically, just do your part. Okay, just do what you can, and we as a people can get much further, right? So I appreciate the listen, and Shemiam Hotep, Anku Jah Seneb Neb, Amen Maat, do our next show.